Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. Forcing the Wanda to marry me, practicing the method of swallowing the stars. Chapter 81. In the factory. The combination of the undead cavalry has also reached its final moment. With the finally integrated soul fire, it sank into the head of the undead knight. A substantial black energy spread on its surface. Finally, it turned into a substantial black armor, tightly wrapping the whole body including the undead horse. Shumo's body slowly fell from the sky. Looking at the more than 30 undead knights and nearly 500 skeleton soldiers, he nodded with satisfaction. Drawing the auxiliary magic circle must be devoted to it wholeheartedly. With the guards of this undead army, he doesn't have to worry about being disturbed by the zombies when carving the magic circle. At this time, a cold feeling came from the body. There are no physical requirements for performing magic, but in this case, when the undead energy is too dense, his body still cannot avoid being invaded by some escaped undead energy. This can also be regarded as a characteristic of undead magic. Otherwise, those necromancers wouldn't be like evil ghosts. But thanks to his strong mental power, there wasn't much undead energy that escaped. After a little movement, he quickly recovered. He flew forward, kicked an undead knight off his horse, and then sat on it himself. These undead knights were created by him and were completely under his control. After all, the undead energy in their bodies was provided by Shumo. Shumo could restore them to a pile of dead bones with just one thought. Because of this, the moment he raised his foot, he could immobilize the opponent and separate him from the undead war horse. Otherwise, with his strength, even if he kicks his leg off, the opponent will not move at all. The undead knight lying on the ground regained control of his body in an instant and stood up from the ground in a daze. Turning around, he saw Shumo who had kicked him down. No nonsense, he obediently returned to the back with his big sword. Cavalry becomes infantry. However, this undead knight obviously cannot understand the truth that infantry is always more popular than cavalry. Riding on a tall war horse that was only about 2 meters long, Shumo took the lead and walked towards Jin Taishi and the others. Before they reached the warehouse, Jin Taishi and the others walked out. The main reason is that the movement of the cavalry is a bit loud. When they run together, the ground nearby can feel the vibration. When Kim Tae came out, he looked at the row of cavalry that looked like a city wall, and felt a pressure coming towards him. But when she saw Shumo sitting on the undead horse in the center, she breathed a sigh of relief. Shumo seemed to realize that bringing so many undead creatures was too much of a hindrance. The dark book between his eyebrows flashed, and these undead creatures disappeared in an instant. He was received into a space created in the Dark God book to specifically store the undead. After he finished summoning the undead, he discovered that a space had automatically opened up in the dark book, which could be called an artifact. Watch these undead disappear directly. Only then did Jin Taishi and Jack feel light all over. Just facing these undead, especially the undead knights, they always felt an inexplicable pressure, as if there was a big stone pressing on their chests. Shumo swept towards the warehouse with his mental power. I saw a mountain of various silver jewelry piled up in the middle of the warehouse. Well done. Shumo praised him and walked directly into the warehouse. With a gentle wave of his hand, he collected all the silver jewelry piled up on the ground. Although it seems like a lot, in terms of weight, it is estimated to be only over 100 tons. When Jin Taishi and the two walked in, looking at the disappeared silver jewelry, a strange color flashed in their eyes. However, after seeing Shumo's various incredible methods, the two of them didn't say much. Under the leadership of Jack, Shumo quickly arrived at the warehouse behind the factory where the raw materials were located. After easily unlocking the door, the three of them walked in. Look around. There are piles of special boxes neatly stacked in the warehouse. The boxes are made of metal. In addition to the frame, each side has a mesh structure with large coin holes. Through the small hole, you can see that there are silver bricks nearly 40 centimeters long stored in the box. The weight of each silver brick is marked on it, 15 kilograms. A rough estimate showed that the silver bricks in the room exceeded 1,000 tons. It was enough for Shumo to arrange the magic circle. After putting away the silver bricks in the room, Shumo turned to look at Jack beside him. My goal has been achieved. Seeing that you are still cooperative, I will give you a ride. A space door opened at Jack's feet, and before he could react, he screamed and fell in. Los Angeles, the second most populous city in the United States. After the doomsday comes, it will naturally be one of the cities with the most zombies. Since the area was the same, Shumo naturally chose the city with the most zombies. Normally speaking, New York, which has the largest population, is the most suitable location for arranging the formation. But considering the geographical factors, Shumo discarded it. Although New York has the largest population, first of all, the city's shape is too irregular. The magic circle is a circular area, and it is not easy to cover it at all. Of course, this is only a secondary reason. The most important thing is that there are too many bodies of water in New York, which can easily lead to a waste of space. Shumo plans to use the space gate to transport more zombies into the formation. In this case, Los Angeles, which is a regular circle with almost all land inside, is the most suitable candidate. Ken Marie Park in southwest Los Angeles. Shumo and Jin Taishi walked out of the space door. Where did you throw him? Jin Taishi walked out of the portal and asked doubtfully. An uninhabited island in the Pacific has abundant resources and is a very suitable place for survival in the wilderness. Kim Tae-hee was speechless after hearing this. But at this time, the safest places are indeed those uninhabited islands. Of course, Shumo didn't intend to let the other party start from scratch, and even threw a bone knife to the other party. With this weapon, he should be able to live a comfortable life on the island. The only drawback is that it's a little lonely. At worst, I'll send him a partner later. While the two were talking, dozens of zombies wandering around, smelling the scent of strangers, roared and rushed towards this direction. Shumo's eyebrows flashed, and a gray vortex appeared in front of him. There was a rumbling sound. A group of undead knights rushed out from inside and spread out in all directions, crushing all the surrounding zombies. The zombies had no intention of resisting when faced with these undead creatures. Even the chicken racks have a trace of meat, but these skeleton racks have nothing but white bones on them. The zombies couldn't arouse any interest at all. Immediately afterwards, nearly 500 skeleton warriors of various types also rushed out. Shumo waved around. Clear the place. Received Shumo's order. These skeleton warriors and undead knights swept in all directions. This was the first place Shumo chose on the map to arrange the auxiliary array. Judging from the scale covering the entire Los Angeles, the diameter of each auxiliary circle is no less than 300 meters. If you want to use mithril to draw a magic circle within this range, there must be no obstacles on the ground. Under the command of Shumo, these undead creatures began crazy demolition work. All obstacles in the entire park, including trees, have been cleared away by them. Shumo looked at the undead creatures that were frantically sweeping around. He raised his right hand and reached into a space door that opened next to him. When he came out, he already held a 4 to 5 centimeter thick book in his hand. The mark of the dark divine book between his eyebrows flashed. A burst of black energy shot into the book in his hand, wrapping the book directly. Under the wrap of energy, the appearance of the book began to slowly change. All the original contents on it had been erased, replaced by magical spells and release methods. After a while, the surrounding energy seeped into the inside of the book. At this time, the appearance of the book is 80% similar to the Book of Darkness. Kim Tae threw the book aside. What's recorded above is part of black magic. Try practicing it. Oh, by the way, if you have something you don't understand, don't bother me. After saying that, regardless of the other party's reaction, Shumo walked to the side and sat down in the open space, planning to use the secret method to prepare these silver bricks into mithril. After hearing this, Jin Taexi's eyes lit up. He hurriedly took the books that Shumo threw over. Can't wait to open the book. Looking at the name of magic on the first page, space teleportation. A look of surprise instantly appeared on her face. After you learn this, you can't just go back to Nanbang to save your sister. Kim Tae muttered excitedly. Thinking of this, she quickly calmed down her excitement and began to study it seriously. On the other side, Shumo waved his hand gently, and a large pile of silver jewelry appeared on the ground in front of him. A stream of purple flame shot out from his hand and floated in midair. Then, under the control of telepathy, the silver ornaments on the ground slowly flew into the purple flame. Shumo spent the whole day refining mithril repeatedly. It's about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. The sky gradually darkened. Shumo put the last liquid mithril into the space ring. Take a deep breath. Repeated movements for a long time made him mentally exhausted. He turned around and looked at Kim Taehi not far away. The other party seems to have been immersed in crazy magic practice. Look at it from Shumo's perspective. Kim Taehi, who had her back turned to him, seemed to be transformed into a welding girl, with bursts of light flashing in front of him. From time to time, a few purple bright spots like Mars flew out. He was mumbling something from time to time. Shumo did not disturb the other party, but turned his head and looked around. The surrounding area within a few hundred meters has been completely cleared by those undead creatures. Fortunately, this place is located in the suburbs, and there are not many zombies around. The only few that were attracted by the movement here were cleaned up. The debris cleaned up in the park was piled up by these undead on the outside of the circle, forming a natural barrier. At this time, the undead were standing scattered inside the barrier, guarding against zombies that might rush in. Undead creatures have this advantage and do not need to rest at all. Success! An excited growl came from behind. Shumo turned around and looked. Jin Taishi almost jumped up with excitement. In front of her, a space door was slowly opening. Seeing this, Shumo hurriedly walked over and pulled Jin Taishi away from the space door. At the same time, a dozen undead knights guarding the outside rushed over under his order. Having had experience, he knows very well that there may be some deviations when opening the space door without skill. God knows where her space door leads to. In case you drive directly into a zombie group, Kim Taehi, who is so close, is likely to become his first magical sacrifice. Fortunately, what he expected did not happen. As the space door opened to the height of one person, the two of them could clearly see the scene on the other side. It looks like the situation is in a classroom. Judging from the writing on the classroom wall, this is obviously a school in Nanbang. After a while, Kim Taehi pointed at a certain location on the wall and shouted excitedly. Seoul National University Suwon campus, this is my sister's school. After saying that, he will rush into the space door. However, Shumo pulled her back by the collar. What sister, what's going on? She woke up when she felt the pain in a certain part of her body. Although she has learned a magic, she is not much different from ordinary people in terms of combat effectiveness. If you want to save your sister, you still have to rely on Shumo. Thinking of this, she quickly told her sister's story. After speaking, she asked cautiously, "Can I borrow a few of those skeleton soldiers, just for one night?" She is well aware of the horror of zombies and understands that the longer it goes on, the smaller the chance of her sister surviving. Shumo nodded. Yes, but there are conditions. I agree to any conditions. Kim Taehi had a determined look on her face. Okay, the terms will be negotiated after you rescue your sister. After saying that, Shumo waved his hand, and the 50 skeleton soldiers on the periphery ran towards this side. Stand behind the two of them. Then, 3 of the undead knights blocking the 2 men walked out, and one of them got off his horse. Finally, Jin Taishi sat on an undead horse, followed by 2 undead knights and 50 skeleton soldiers, and entered the space gate. Judging from the fact that it took less than a day to successfully cast a spell like Space Gate, the opponent's talent for practicing magic is not bad. Besides, you can also take this opportunity to train each other. After all, after he leaves, she will have to lead these undead legions to clean up the zombies. If you can't handle this matter, how will you control those undead souls? Looking at the slowly closing space door, Shumo left these undead knights here to guard, and returned to the yacht. Coming out of the space door, Alyssa was lying on the bedboard. Seeing Shumo walking out of the space door, she immediately climbed out of bed excitedly. He walked forward and looked at the slowly closing space door behind Shumo with strange eyes. This too, Shumo nodded numbly. After a busy day of running around, his body was almost unable to bear it due to his physical condition. When Alyssa saw this, she came up with a smile on her face. Hiss, what are you doing? Early the next morning, Shumo held his waist and walked out of the room. He finally knew who he was in this world and was unwilling to let Alyssa break up with her boyfriend. In addition to satisfying his special little hobby, it turns out that there is another reason. This woman is really poisonous. It's fine to treat her as a good friend and communicate with her occasionally. But if she treats her as a girlfriend, with the physical condition of the original owner, I'm afraid she won't be able to survive a year. Come to the deck of the yacht. Harry was looking at the water around him in trance. Hearing footsteps behind him, Harry turned around and saw Shumo walking up. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Who are you anyway?" As the original owner's best friend, it was obvious that from this less than a day's contact, he easily judged that the person in front of him was no longer his good friend. Shumo's expression didn't change at all when he heard this. He was not surprised that the other party would find out. Of course, this was also the reason why he didn't deliberately hide it. "It doesn't matter who I am, but you should know that I have no intention of harming you." Seeing Shumo, he did not deny it. Harry had a look of loneliness on his face. Being able to risk his life and save Shumo together showed that Harry really regarded the original owner as his best friend. "Can you help me?" Harry hesitated before speaking. "You say, can you send me to a deserted island with no people?" Harry guessed from Shumo's ability to disappear and reappear quietly that he should have this ability. The amount of fuel in this yacht can, at most, travel a few hundred nautical miles. As far as he knew, there was no suitable island nearby. "Sure," Shumo nodded. At this time, living on an uninhabited island is indeed the safest option. After saying that, Shumo snapped his fingers, and the space door slowly opened beside them. On the other side, Bell, who was cutting down a tree with a white bone knife, turned his head when he heard the noise. Seeing Shumo on the other side, a smile appeared on his face. "Hi," Bell said hello. It can be seen that the other party seems to be very satisfied with life on the island. Half an hour later, the space door slowly closed. "I just learned from Harry that his parents passed away a year ago and he doesn't have any relatives in the world right now, so he chose to live on an island." Shumo had already left all the useful materials on the ship with them. The food alone is enough for the two of them to consume for several months. Maybe the zombies will be cleared away before they are all consumed. After sending Harry away, he had some problems. What to do with Alyssa on this ship? Just leave it alone. Obviously it wasn't appropriate. Shumo couldn't do such a ruthless thing. After hesitating for a moment, Shumo made a decision. "I might as well sign a devil's contract. Staying here can be of some use." Thinking of this, Shumo returned to the bedroom again. The sound of opening the door woke the other party up, and Alyssa looked at Shumo standing at the door. Put on a voluptuous figure on the bed. "Honey, do you want to do some morning exercise?" Shumo stroked his forehead. Looking at the other person, he didn't look like a magic material, but more like a succubus. "Sit tight, I have something serious to talk to you about." Next, Shumo recounted the devil's contract to the other party. "Sign the contract at the front, the choice is yours." After listening to this, Alyssa showed an excited look on her face. "Yes, of course, honey, hurry up, I can't wait any longer." As the devil's contract sank into Shumo's eyebrows, the contract officially came into effect. Waited for more than 10 seconds. Alyssa looked at herself doubtfully. "Is this the end? What else do you want? At least let's have some clothes explosion or something." Shumo speechlessly threw a book containing black magic to the other party. "You can study it slowly by yourself, I'm leaving first." After saying that, Shumo opened the space door and left directly. Seeing Shumo leaving, Alyssa didn't take it seriously and directly opened the book in her hand and started reading. After seeing the space teleportation skill, she licked her lips. "Wow, this is a wonderful skill for entertaining yourself." Ken Marie Park. The undead who had stood all night showed no signs of fatigue and still strictly followed Shumo's orders. The dark book appeared in front of him. Quickly turned to the page of the auxiliary magic circle needed for the undead disaster. Looking at the complex lines on it, Shumo first drew an outline on the ground that was magnified tens of thousands of times, and then controlled the liquid mithril he had refined earlier to draw along these outlines. If you want to successfully draw the magic circle, you don't allow any mistakes in your hands. For a whole morning, Shumo concentrated on sculpting the formation. Until near noon, the last line was integrated with the previous one. The entire auxiliary array is finally completed. The moment the magic circle was completed, a ray of purple light began to flow along the lines of the magic circle, until the entire magic circle lit up, and then the light disappeared again. A smile appeared on Shumo's face. This means that this magic circle has been completely completed. Judging from this speed, it will take at least 3 or 4 days to complete all the magic circles. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Shumo planned to take a rest and took a look at Jin Taexi's situation. Close your eyes. He immediately felt 2 spots of light in his consciousness. This is another function of the devil's contract. You can observe the scene around the other party of the contract at any time. It was obvious that these 2 spots of light were Kim Tae-hee and Alyssa, who had signed a contract with him. The attempted link was a light point farther away, and a picture appeared in his mind. Nambang is more than 100 kilometers west of Suwon City. Kim Tae-hee rode on a skeleton horse more than 2 meters high, followed by 50 skeleton soldiers. At this time, the size of these skeleton soldiers has almost increased by 1/3, and the white bones on their bodies have become like white jade, shining with crystal light. Carefully control the skeleton horse under you, trying not to make any noise. After arriving here last night, she directly controlled these skeleton soldiers to clear out the zombies in the entire university. Fortunately, the university was not located in the urban area of Suwon City, so the noise did not attract a large number of zombies. After cleaning up, she rummaged through the zombie corpses. Fortunately, her sister Jenny was not found inside. After that, she searched around the university. Judging from the bloodstains drawn by a car at the gate of the campus, it is inferred that someone drove a vehicle towards the west from the campus after the zombie virus broke out. You can reach the seaside by driving in this direction for 2 or 3 hours. She also speculated that these people should be planning to go to sea. There was no trace of Jenny around, so she could only pray, and Jenny followed her in the car and left here. Then she didn't have time to rest and chased him directly. Fortunately, there is only one road that bypasses the city and leads to the seaside, so there is no need to worry about taking a side road. But until now, less than 30 kilometers away from the seaside, there is still no trace of the car. She couldn't help but feel a little uneasy in her heart. At this time, the suburbs of Cheonan City are less than 10 kilometers away from the seaside. A bus broke down on the roadside. At this time, a man who was not tall but extremely strong stood in front of the rear tire of the car and kicked the flat tire. Ziba, the car broke down at this time. At this time, several college students in school uniforms got out of the car. Teacher JJ, how are you doing? The car is broken down, we need to walk the rest of the distance. This place is located in the wild, and it is obviously impossible to find a new car. GJ frowned and checked on his phone. We are less than 10 kilometers away from the seaside. Only by boarding a ship on the seaside can we be safe. These students have a deep understanding of this. Those zombies have extremely sensitive hearing and sense of smell. The slightest movement may attract them. When we were resting in the car last night, no one could sleep well. Everyone was always in a state of anxiety, fearing that zombies would follow the smell and catch up. Fortunately, the night was spent peacefully. If they live in this kind of nervous mood all day long, they may collapse first without the zombies eating them. At this time, a male student in the crowd looked at the worried look on the face of another girl on the side. Jenny, don't worry, I will protect you. After Jenny heard this, she looked at the other person's body shape, which was as thin as a grasshopper, and rolled her eyes speechlessly. You'd better protect yourself first. Also, please call me Jenny Jin from now on. After saying that, Jenny ignored the other party's ugly expression and went directly back to the car to put her backpack on her back. People around him also returned to the car and packed up. Zhao Dongshu looked at Jenny in the car with a gloomy face, a trace of imperceptible cruelty flashing in his eyes. He has been pursuing her for 2.5 years. But until now, the other party has never looked at her. You forced me to do this. An idea flashed through his mind. At this time, JJ walked out of the car carrying a backpack. Hey, brat, what are you doing? Hurry up and carry the things you need on your back. No one will share the hard-earned food with you. On the drive here, the car once passed a gas station. After cleaning up the only dozen zombies with their cars, they collected a large amount of food and water from the supermarket at the gas station. The car is almost fully loaded. But it is obviously impossible to take them all away at the moment. It can only depend on each person's physical strength and how much they can carry. After Zhao Dongshu heard this, he quickly nodded with a smile on his face. Okay, Teacher GJ. After speaking, he quickly turned around and walked towards the car door. But after getting out of Jija's sight, the coldness in his eyes flashed away. If you want to implement your plan, you must first get rid of this troublesome guy. He and GJ are the only two men in this team. As long as there is no other party, he can do whatever he wants. But if he wanted to get rid of the opponent, he had to find a way. He had seen the opponent kill 3 zombies with his bare hands before. After a few minutes, 7 or 8 students followed Jijay and walked towards the seaside. A journey of 10 kilometers is not far. But if you rely on walking, it will take at least nearly 2 hours. What's more, these people each carry a large bag of food. Just over half an hour. Each of these students was exhausted and panting. And Zhao Dongshu was almost out of breath due to a long-term lack of exercise. At this time, several people saw the shadow of a small town appearing in the distance. There's a car over there. A girl's voice rang in everyone's ears. Everyone followed her gaze. Sure enough, a pickup truck was parked on the road outside the town, and the zombies nearby were somehow attracted away or something, and not a single zombie could be seen. The car door was open, but the distance was too far and there was no way to see clearly what was inside the car. Teacher Jijay, why don't we go over and take a look? If the car can start, it will save us a lot of time. The girl continued to speak. Jijay hesitated for a moment. No, that location is too close to the town. If zombies suddenly rush out of it, none of us can escape. Hearing this, these people nodded one after another. Indeed, with the coast less than 2 hours away, there was no need to take the risk. After figuring it out, they continued to grit their teeth and rushed towards the seaside. Only Zhao Dongshu, who was deliberately walking behind, moved his eyes and gradually slowed down. While no one was paying attention, he left the team and quietly walked towards the car outside the town. A few minutes later, he came to the car. Looking inside the car, a smile appeared on his face. There were no zombies in the car, and the car key was clearly inserted into the keyhole. Zhao Dongshu did not hesitate, put his backpack on the car, and then tried to start the car. After all, only 1 day had passed in the apocalypse, and the car started smoothly once. He turned the front of the car and did not drive away directly. Instead, he took a deep breath and pressed the horn on the steering wheel. Dip! The harsh sound echoed in the quiet town. Almost instantly, the town began to boil. The roars of zombies sounded one after another, and in less than 10 seconds, a zombie appeared at the end of the road behind the car and ran towards the direction of the car. And while running, the size of the zombie swarm is gradually expanding. After seeing that the distance was almost there, Zhao Dongshu drove the car directly in the direction of everyone. The moment the car horn sounds, the people who were walking with difficulty also stopped and looked in the direction where the horn sounded. In this quiet environment, this sound was unusually obvious. It was only then that a girl screamed in surprise. Teacher Jijay, Zhao Dongshu is missing. After Jijay heard this, his expression changed. Not good. He instantly realized that Zhao Dongshu should be driving the car, and the direction from which the whistle had just sounded confirmed this. You guys go quickly, I'll go over and take a look. After Jijay gave the order, he planned to check it out from a distance. If there was a chance, he would naturally not want to give up on everyone. But before he could start, he saw the pickup truck appearing at the end of the road. Not far behind the car were a group of chasing zombies. The pickup truck quickly caught up with everyone and stopped directly next to Jenny. Get in the car quickly. Zhao Dongshu pretended to be anxious. After Jijay saw it, he glared at him fiercely. I'll settle the score with you later. After saying that, although he was not panicked, he walked directly to the girls and helped them climb into the compartment behind the car. After everyone went up, Jijay decided to go up. At this time, the zombies were still 60 or 70 meters away from them. It's totally in time. However, Zhao Dongshu, who had been staring at the rearview mirror for a long time, did not give him this chance. He stepped on the accelerator hard, and the car let out an angry roar before flying out, knocking Jijay to the ground as he tried to get in the car. GJ, who fell to the ground, let out an angry roar. It was obvious that the other party wanted him to die deliberately. He got up from the ground and chased madly in the direction of the car. Jenny, who was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, saw this and looked at Zhao Dongshu angrily. "What are you doing? Teacher Jie hasn't gotten on the bus yet." "Really? I'm sorry I didn't pay attention." Zhao Dongshu had a wild smile on his face. Seeing his expression, Jenny understood immediately. "Did you do it on purpose?" There was an expression of disbelief on her face. You know, they, including Zhao Dongshu in front of them, were able to escape from the school thanks to teacher Jie, but they didn't expect that Zhao Dongshu in front of them was so bad. He will even harm the person who saved his life. Behind the car. It was obviously impossible for Jie to catch up with the speeding car. Soon the car disappeared from his sight. Siba. Jie cursed, then threw away his backpack and started running at full speed. He turned around and glanced at the distance between him and the zombies behind him, but he was not happy at all. Although the distance has increased, it is impossible for him to maintain this speed for too long, while the zombies behind him can keep running to death like this. He turned around and looked around. On both sides of the empty road, only a willow tree more than 10 meters high was located less than 100 meters away from him. Without any hesitation, he ran directly towards the willow tree. After arriving under the tree, with a few quick moves, he climbed along the main trunk to the top of the tree. Soon the zombies also chased after them, swarming towards the tree. Jie forcefully broke off a dry branch from the tree and kept stabbing down the zombies that were near him. But depending on the situation, it won't take a few minutes for these zombies to reach his height just by relying on this stack. Jie had no choice. His strength was almost exhausted. If he kept running, he would probably be caught up by these zombies in less than a minute. By then, there would be no chance of survival for him. Looking at the zombie group that was gradually rising in height, Jie showed a trace of despair on his face. This time, in the distance, a group of white figures approached here. Finally, it stopped 100 meters away from the trees. The leader is Kim Tae, who is riding a skeleton horse. Jin Taishi looked at the scene in the distance. A man squatted on the top of the tree like a gorilla, and from time to time he used the wooden stick in his hand to push down the zombies approaching him. Although the scene is somewhat funny, depending on the situation, the other party will soon be unable to support it. She waved gently. The skeleton soldiers behind him rushed towards the zombies. Just like chopping melons and vegetables, within a few minutes, all the hundreds of zombies surrounding the tree were chopped down. Jie, who was squatting on the tree, changed his expression when he saw the skeleton for the first time. What the hell is this? Not only can Deadman run, but now he can even stab someone with a knife. However, when I noticed Kim Tae sitting on a horse in the distance, it was obvious that these skeletons were controlled by someone. He also breathed a sigh of relief. Humans are better than these monsters who can't communicate. After a while, Kim Tae rode a skeleton horse to the foot of the big tree and looked up at Jie, who was squatting on the top of the tree. "Did you run away from college?" she asked straight to the point, with a look of expectation on her face. On the way here, she saw the broken down bus. This place is not too far from the bus location, so she made this guess. Hearing this, Jie's eyes lit up and he quickly slid down from the tree using his hands and feet. "Yes, I am a teacher at Seoul National University. Who are you?" "Among the people you escaped with, was there a girl named Jenny?" Jin Taishi asked hurriedly, and then added something after that. "I'm Jenny's sister." Jie finally understood and nodded. He recounted what happened before and then pointed in a direction. That fool took them away from this direction. Kim Tae breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the news that Jenny was safe, but he learned from the other party's words that Zhao Dongshu's boy obviously didn't have any good intentions. There was no hesitation at the moment. He waved directly to another undead knight on the side. The undead knight stepped forward on his horse, lifted Jie from the ground with one hand, and placed him behind him. Then, under the leadership of Jin Taishi, they chased in the direction of the car at high speed. Seaside. The pickup truck suddenly stopped and stopped outside the dock. There were bloodstains everywhere on the ground of the dock. But there were no zombies. Judging from the situation, they were all attracted to leave for some reason. Everyone got out of the car. Several girls sitting in the back car criticized Zhao Dongshu, who got off the cab. How could you leave teacher GJ behind? That's right, obviously there's still enough time. I think he did it on purpose. Listening to the crowd's voices, Zhao Dongshu showed a crazy expression on his face. Shut up. After saying that, he stepped forward and kicked the two girls who were the loudest to the ground. If you dare to talk any more, believe it or not, I will throw you out of here. Seeing his ferocious expression, the other girls were too frightened to speak. Seeing that everyone was shocked by him, Zhao Dongshu showed a satisfied smile on his face, and then turned to show off his cards to Jenny. But as soon as he turned his head, he saw a baseball bat with blood stains coming towards him. It hit him on the head with a thud. Zhao Dongshu suffered a heavy blow to the head and fell to the ground, covering his head with both hands. However, he was slow to react and reached out to grab the baseball bat that attacked again. And grabbed it with one hand. Jenny, who was holding the wooden stick, was pulled and staggered. Siba. Zhao Dongshu stood up holding the stick and looked at Jenny with a gloomy expression. You fool, you have no shame. When Jin saw this, she quickly turned around and ran away. She seemed to have overestimated her own strength, and a full blow did not knock the opponent unconscious. And all the baseball bats picked up from the ground were taken away by the opponent. The innate physical difference makes it easy for even such a weak man to handle an ordinary woman. When Zhao Dongshu saw that the other party was about to run, he suddenly hit her leg with a stick. Jenny screamed in pain and fell to the ground. The other 5 or 6 girls were frightened and fled in all directions when they saw this scene. In their opinion, Zhao Dongshu has gone crazy. Seeing several people running away behind him, Zhao Dongshu remained unmoved. His original goal was Jin. Compared with her, those women with faces like flatbreads couldn't arouse his interest at all. Looking at Jenny's young and charming face, he licked his lips. But he didn't get carried away. Although there are currently no zombies in this place, there is no telling when a group will come out from somewhere. Looking at a fishing boat not far away, he ignored Jenny's resistance and pulled the other person towards the fishing boat. Zhao Dongshu had just taken 2 steps. I heard a slight running sound in the distance. Turn around and look. Suddenly they saw the direction they came from, a group of skeletons with only skeletons left, running towards this direction at great speed. Running at the front were 3 skeleton war horses. Seeing this, the expressions of Zhao Dongshu and Jenny changed at the same time. Zhao Dongshu quickly quickened his pace. Fortunately, he was not too far away from the ship at this time. In a few breaths, he had already reached the ship. At this time, he also breathed a sigh of relief. His family has a small amount of assets, and he once learned how to drive a boat during vacation. Although it is different from the fishing boat in front of him, the control methods are similar. He was confident that he could get the ship started. In the distance, Jie, who was sitting on the skeleton horse, saw that the other party was walking towards the cabin, and the expression on his face changed. Oops, now the distance between the 2 parties is still a full 300 to 400 meters. If the other party is allowed to move the ship, it may really allow the other party to escape. After all, no matter how you look at it, these skeletons do not have the ability to fight in the water. After entering the water, these skeletons will probably sink to the bottom in an instant. He was almost cheated to death by this kid, and the resentment he felt towards Zhao Dongshu was not ordinary. Now he wanted to tear that kid into pieces. When he saw that the other person was about to run away, he was naturally itching with hatred. Kim Tae, who was sitting on the skeleton horse in front, naturally saw this scene. But the look on her face was very happy. Although the distance is still quite far. But she could still vaguely recognize that the girl was her sister Jenny. As long as the other party is alive, it is the greatest good news. As for her being kidnapped by the other party, she was not worried at all. With the ability to teleport through space, she can easily go to the ship and rescue Jenny. But there's no need to bother with that right now. She waved her arm towards the skeleton behind her, and a message was conveyed. This is also the precise way to control the undead troops recorded in the Dark God's book. As long as the orders are not too complicated, these undead can execute them accurately. Of course, this is for low-level undead. The IQs of some advanced undead are no less than those of humans, or even higher than ordinary humans, so there is no need for such trouble. A running skeleton archer suddenly accelerated. The two skeleton soldiers in front of it had their hands folded. The archer jumped up, stepped on their overlapping hands, and with the help of the power of the two skeleton soldiers, it flew directly into the sky dozens of meters high. After reaching the highest point, the skeleton archer nocked an arrow with his bow and shot a bone arrow into the distance. The bone arrow turned into a stream of light and disappeared in a flash. In almost a moment, he crossed a distance of several hundred meters, penetrated Zhao Dongshu's belly, and pinned him to the deck. Ah! Zhao Dongshu let out a scream. Seeing this, Jenny Jin on the side quickly took the opportunity to get rid of the opponent's hand and hid in the cabin nearby. She looked at the terrifying monster approaching in the distance, sweat breaking out on her forehead. She doesn't know how to sail a boat like Zhao Dongshu, so her only way out now is to escape by diving. Taking a deep breath, she hurriedly ran out of the cabin and ran to the side. But before she could jump down, she heard a familiar shout from the distance. Turning around, she suddenly discovered that among the monsters rushing over, the one riding on the skeleton horse at the front was her sister, Kim Tae-hee. Ernie. Soon Kim Tae-hee had arrived. After getting off the skeleton horse, she ran forward and hugged Jenny. After a while, the two separated. Jenny looked at her sister in disbelief. Oni, aren't you in the United States? Why are you here? What's going on with these monsters behind you? After hearing this, Jin Taishi explained to the other party. On the other side, Jie came to Zhao Dongshu who was crying in pain on the ground. He clenched his fists. You brat, if you fall into my hands, I will make you understand what will happen if you try to assassinate the teacher. After saying that, fists as big as casseroles kept falling on the opponent's head. When the two sisters Kim Tae-hee came over, the other party had already passed away. Seeing the miserable look on the other person's face, Jenny Jin showed no mercy and stepped forward and kicked him a few more times. You want to take advantage of me? Jenny Jin stuck out her tongue when she saw her sister's serious expression. Oni, I was wrong. I promise to be careful with my words in the future. Since her parents passed away, her sister has been taking care of her, and she loves and fears this sister at the same time. Later, Kim Tae-hee also thanked Ki Chul. He also asked the skeleton soldiers to go to a nearby supermarket to help him collect a large amount of supplies and stack them in the warehouse on the ship. After all, without him, my sister might have died on campus long ago. Watching the ship slowly sailing away, Jenny Jin asked, where do we go next? Kim Tae-hee gave her an inscrutable look. Just follow my sister. After saying that, she stretched out her right hand and slid it gently. The portal slowly opened in front of the two of them. Having just gained this ability, she couldn't wait to show it off in front of Jenny. Sure enough, Jenny's eyes widened when she saw this scene. When Jin Taishi saw the other party's expression, a trace of satisfaction appeared on his face. Wealth and honor do not return to their hometown, just like walking in brocade at night. With this kind of ability, how can you not pretend to be in front of familiar people? But as the space door slowly opened, she looked stunned when she saw the scenery on the other side. The space door opened over the boundless ocean. Jenny naturally saw the scene over there. He looked at her suspiciously. Oni, will we be fed to fish if we go there? Jin Taishi closed the space door with his hand and pretended to be calm. I stayed up all night to find you. Maybe I was too tired, so I inevitably made some mistakes. Come again. After saying that, she calmed down, took a deep breath, and slid her right hand again. Another space door opened in front of the two of them. Looking at the icy and snowy scene on the other side, and the penguins staring blankly at them, Jenny finally couldn't help it anymore and looked at the other person questioningly. Oni, can you do it? After 2 consecutive mistakes, Kim Tae finally couldn't stand it any longer, with a look of embarrassment on her face. But just then, on the Antarctic glacier inside the space door, less than 2 meters away from her opening the space door, another space door opened, leading to the square where Shumo was. Another one appears. What's going on? Jenny Jin shouted in surprise. Seeing this scene, Kim Tae was just slightly stunned before reacting. This was undoubtedly Shumo helping him relieve his embarrassment. Immediately, she regained her calm expression and reached out to wipe away the sweat that had just appeared on her head due to nervousness. Of course I saw you were too hot, so I helped you cool down during the transit. After saying that, he took the lead and walked towards the portal. She had just stepped into the space door, wearing only single clothes, and shuddered. Shumo looked at Jin Taishi, who walked out of the space door. A smile appeared on his face. After Jin Taishi noticed it, a look of embarrassment flashed across his face. After Jenny walked through, her eyes looked at the surrounding scene curiously. Looking at Shumo standing up from the ground, there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Is this the man that my sister said was the man who gave her special abilities? Shumo noticed the other person's eyes and turned to look over. Jenny, who has always been fearless, saw the other party looking over and quickly lowered her head. You know, this is the legendary devil. Regarding the contract, Kim Taishi had already told her in detail. Of course, Shumo could completely prevent her from revealing all this, but he didn't do that. Shumo's idea was very simple. Jenny Jin must also sign a contract with her. This was also the condition that he had already thought of for the other party to borrow the undead. It's not that she fancy the other person, but that he understands that Jenny's status in Kim Taehe's heart is even higher than her own. This is an unstable factor for Shumo. After all, Kim Taehe is willing to die for the other party, so when the binding force of the contract conflicts with the safety of her sister, she will undoubtedly choose Kim Jenny. There is no need to kill the opponent directly. Then Jenny's soul can only be under his control. In this way, Kim Taehe will execute his orders unconditionally. After he returned, the undead army here was all in the opponent's hands, and it was impossible for him to keep an eye on this side all the time. This involves hundreds of millions of points, and there is no room for any surprises. Shumo passed his conditions to Kim Taehe through the power of the contract. After hearing this, Jin Taexi's expression changed. She can do whatever she wants, but she doesn't want Jenny to sign such a contract with the other party. But after thinking for a moment, she nodded directly. Putting aside, even if he refuses, it will be of no use. Instead, it will anger Shumo, and neither of them will end well. Even if the other party lets them go, she still can't get over the hurdle in her heart. After all, if it hadn't been for Shumo, neither of the sisters would have survived. Jenny might even become someone else's plaything, and her life would be worse than death. In comparison, having the soul come out first and be controlled by the opponent seems a bit insignificant. After thinking for a while, she turned around and pulled Jenny Jin aside, intending to persuade the other party. Is it really okay? Unexpectedly, after she proposed it, Jenny's face showed a look of excitement, as if to the other party, this was a great thing. No, you heard me clearly, you need to sacrifice your soul. From now on, just a thought from the other party will make your life worse than death. So what? Jenny's face showed a look of taking it for granted. If you want to get something, you have to give it. If not, why would anyone lend you their power? Just because of your face. Don't be ridiculous. If someone has this kind of ability, he will care about a woman like you. As long as the other party thinks about it, all the women in the world belong to him. Even if he uses force on you, what can you do? Hearing this, Kim Taehe suddenly understood. My thoughts were still stuck before the end of the world, but I didn't expect that Jenny was much more thorough than I thought. Okay, I'm a little superficial. A moment later, the same contract was signed. As for magic, give him a copy of your book. Also, you two should practice the magic of space teleportation first. You should try to master this magic within a few days. As for her, it depends on her talent. After saying that, Shumo ignored the two of them and came to the zombie corpses piled outside. Summoning of the dead. He was ready to go to the next location to set up the magic circle. During this period of time, it is impossible not to leave some undead guards on the completed magic circle to avoid being destroyed by zombies or surviving humans. 10 minutes later, thousands of skeleton soldiers and more than 30 undead knights were arranged neatly in front of him. Opening the space door, he walked in with these undead soldiers. It took 3 or 4 days. Shumo wandered in all directions of the city. Until this day, as a ray of light flashed, the last auxiliary magic circle was finally completed. After leaving a group of undead to guard him, Shumo came to the Wilshire Center in central Los Angeles. It is also the tallest building in the city. In a hotel room on the top floor. The two sisters Kim Tae live here temporarily. At this time, the two of them were sitting cross-legged on the balcony of the living room. Practice space teleportation in midair outside the window. In this way, even if the other end of the space door is crowded with zombies, you don't have to worry about threatening your own safety. The talents of Kim Jenny and Kim Tae are almost the same. The space teleportation was successfully performed almost on the first day. Shumo was a little surprised when he learned all this. For this reason, he took the time to go back to the ship and found that Alyssa had also learned this magic. It is possible for a single person to have such a high talent, but for 3 people to have such high talent, Shumo has confirmed that this does not seem to have anything to do with talent. He guessed that it might be due to some characteristics of the contract or this different world. Instruct the two to leave the building. Shumo then flew out of the window and floated to the side of the roof. With a slight stroke of his right hand, a portal of huge amounts appeared on the roof of the building. On the other side of the portal is a cruise ship of huge amounts. Because 1/3 of the space door is opened below the water surface, this causes seawater to swarm in this direction. The cruise ship, driven by the seawater, rushed towards the space door. After a while, the cruise ship rushed out of the space door with the seawater and hit the roof of the building hard. Huge amounts of impact force caused the bottom of the cruise ship to sink into the top of the building. The cruise ship landed steadily on the roof of the building. Except for the very bottom, the rest of it extends out of the building. And due to the slope at the bottom of the ship, it is basically impossible for zombies to climb onto the deck of the cruise ship from the outside of the building. The two sisters standing on the roof of a nearby building watched this scene. They were all stunned. Can this portal be opened so wide? Jenny asked, looking at her sister. It can be done. Although they were immersed in practice all day long, the mental strength of the two of them was there after all. At most, it can only open a space door with a diameter of 5 or 6 meters. It is incomparable to the one in front of me with a diameter of more than 50 meters. After finishing, Shumo ordered the two of them to come to the edge of the deck of the huge yacht. You two keep practicing. Try to open the space door in a place where zombies are densely populated. After saying that, Shumo came to the yacht where Alyssa was. After entering the room, Shumo saw the scene in the room. Even a pervert like him couldn't stand it. When Alyssa saw Shumo walking in, she closed the portal that sandwiched her. He came up to me like a child who had done something wrong. You can't blame me. Who made you not come back for several days? Shumo looked at her speechlessly. He asked her to practice space teleportation, but she obeyed. But this practice method is really explosive. Throw Alyssa into the cruise ship on the roof. Shumo came to the U.S. Department of Defense. If you want to be able to use undead creatures to clean up zombies safely, you have to deal with a threat. It's nuclear weapons. To prevent some high-level human beings from seeing the threat of the undead when transforming the undead or cleaning up the zombies, they directly use nuclear weapons to deal with the undead. These nuclear weapons must be destroyed first. Although the network in many cities has been interrupted now. But the satellite network is still available. The launch of nuclear weapons relies on the satellite networks of various countries to transmit information. Of course, a large number of weapon launch systems are not connected to the external network. This requires Shumo to destroy them one by one. To this end, he also specially exchanged an intelligence system similar to Jarvis. Within one day, Shumo visited various countries that possess nuclear weapons. At night, Shumo stood on the deck of the cruise ship on the roof. I looked at the time on my watch. It should be almost the same. As soon as he finished speaking, within sight, several white lines were seen flying towards the sky. Until reaching outer space, a burst of light came from the end of these white lines. This scene takes place in various countries that possess nuclear weapons. From this moment on, there will be no nuclear weapons on the entire Earth. Shumo looked at the 3 people standing behind him. Next, let's get started. As his words fell, the 3 of them came to the edges of the deck in all directions. Put the headphones on around your neck. Wave your hand to cast a spell. A space door with a diameter of several meters slowly opened. Shumo came to the air. With the appearance of the Dark God Book, 3 huge space gates with a diameter of about 50 meters appeared in the distant sky. Shumo, who could only use one file-sized space door like this, opened 3 directly with the increase of the Dark God book. And these 3 space gates all lead to the most populous cities in the world. With all the space doors opened, Shumo pressed a button on the remote control in his hand. Huge amounts of whistles are heard coming from the cruise ship. The other end of the space door includes the entire city of Los Angeles, and all the zombies are running madly towards the building. The 9 space gates in the sky are large and small. It is like a flood discharge gate. Countless zombies spewed out from inside. However, since the space door was in midair, these zombies fell directly from midair after they came out. Soon, the ground has become a sea of zombies. Countless zombies crazily climbed up along the outer wall of the building. However, the outer walls of the building are all made of glass, so zombies have no way to take advantage of it. As the number of zombies increased, they piled up directly around the building. In a short time, they were stacked to a height of more than 10 meters. However, this height is insignificant for a building that reaches more than 300 meters. Shumo looked at the crazy zombies below. I couldn't help but sigh again. This is almost the most despairing zombie among all zombie worlds. Strengthened hearing and smell, and tireless. As long as you are attracted by the sound, you will never stop. There are almost no obstacles that can stop them. The only drawback may be that they cannot swim. In the United States Pacific Aircraft Carrier Fleet, Admiral Wells was sitting in the conference room with a heavy look on his face. At this time, the atmosphere in the entire conference room seemed a bit dull. Just now all the nuclear weapons in the entire country were launched into space. Originally this thing was used as the last force to resist zombies, but for some unknown reason it was directly launched. At this time, a soldier walked up to him and whispered a few words in his ear. What? His expression changed, and then he waved his hand. The soldier nodded, returned to the computer aside for a while. Soon, a picture was projected onto the big screen in front of the conference room. People in the conference room looked upward. The scene on the screen was the scene outside the Wilshire Center building. Looking at the scene on the screen, exclamations of exclamation echoed throughout the conference room. God, did I read that right? How did this cruise ship get placed on the roof of the building? That's amazing. What is that portal? Unbelievable. Hearing the people's exclamations, Admiral Wells clapped his hands. The entire conference room fell silent instantly. Several other cities have also had this kind of portal appear, and based on intelligence, these portals are similar to portals, which attract all zombies from various cities to Los Angeles. As he said that, several more small pictures appeared on the screen. It was a space gate in other cities, and countless zombies were rushing in towards the space gate. Then, the picture gradually zoomed in. They also saw several people standing on the roof. However, I can only see the general outline, but I can't see the specific appearance. What do you think we should do? Admiral Wells asked. After a moment, an officer spoke. I think this is an opportunity for us. After attracting everyone's attention, he continued. Although we don't know what the other party's purpose is, judging from the current situation, it is good for us. Now there is a large population on the ship, and food and water are not enough. It seems that one of the cities that zombies are being attracted to leave is New York. The other party has attracted the zombies in New York, so obviously this is a great opportunity for us to collect supplies. Having said this, he took a tactical drink of water. And I suggest that you don't provoke the other party, just pretend that the other party doesn't exist. The other party has such methods. We have no way to fight against him. He only needs to open a portal to the city center on the ship, and we will all die in the mouths of zombies. After hearing his words, everyone in the conference room nodded in agreement. Admiral Wells agreed. Okay, send a message to all remaining fleets in the territory. No one can provoke each other without reason. The same meeting takes place in every country with satellites around the world. Surprisingly consistent, all countries made the same decision as Wells. The space door lasted for a whole day. During this process, every once in a while, they would change the location of the space passage. Shumo looked at the zombies that had been stacked under the hull and let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, thanks to the combined structure of the ship and the building, these zombies can't get in at all. Almost. The number of zombies in the entire city of Los Angeles is now conservatively estimated to exceed tens of millions. It is nearly 4 to 5 times the number of zombies in this city. Because he didn't know whether magic like the undead calamity, which transformed zombies into undead creatures, would have any points, he didn't plan to continue. If the points were not counted, wouldn't it be a big loss for me? Anyway, after death, zombies and corpses can also be transformed again. An army of the undead with tens of millions of zombies transformed is enough. After all, the army of the undead is growing in number with each war. Thinking of this, Shumo turned around and sent the 3 people who were almost exhausted out of the magic circle. You must know that in this magic circle, there is no distinction between friend and foe. All living things are imbued with undead energy. Several portals opened by him slowly closed. At the same time, his body began to float slowly, hovering about 50 meters above the cruise ship. A series of difficult and incomprehensible spells came out of his mouth. The energy in the dark book in front of him began to fluctuate violently. As the last spell was exported, a tsunami-like tide of energy spewed out from the dark god's book, and a dark pillar of light penetrated the sky and the earth. At the same time, 5 magic circles located around the city were also activated. The same 5 light pillars appeared. The entire city is filled with a gray-black energy. The natural disaster of the undead is coming. Chapter 91. With the completion of the magic circle. A huge amount of black light shield, with the auxiliary magic circle as the boundary, enveloped the entire city. Subsequently, endless gray energy centered on the dark god book and spread crazily. Soon it filled the entire city. Outside the city, the 3 women looked at the spectacular sight in front of them in shock. Looking from the outside, you can only see the gray area of the mask, and you can't see the specific situation inside at all. You could only roughly see a few zombies near the protective shield. The moment they came into contact with the gray energy, their flesh and blood melted like ice and snow. Jenny had a worried look on her face. Boss, will he be okay in there? After signing the contract, they originally wanted to change their name to Master, but Shumo refused and asked them to change their name to Boss. After all, calling him Master makes him look like a pervert. Although this fact is not far from the truth. Only Alyssa would still call him that at some point. Don't worry, Alyssa smiled seductively, patted her talent and promised. Judging from my personal experience during this time, my sister, the Master is great. Hearing this, Jenny's face turned red. Kim Tae-hee on the side glanced at her angrily. But he didn't say much. Through these few days of contact, she has also understood Alyssa's character. The word, pervert, is not enough to describe 1/10 of her. Compared to what she was doing on the boat these days. This is considered to be convergence enough. Inside the shield, under the gray energy, the entire city has become completely quiet. All the zombies lay on the ground as if they were completely dead, and all the flesh and blood on their bodies had disappeared. Look around. The streets were filled with piles of bones. After each zombie's flesh and blood is completely melted, an imperceptible filament will overflow from the corpse and gather into the sky. Gradually a rolling gray sphere formed in the air. The gray energy still penetrated into the white bones without stopping. This process lasted for more than an hour. In the sky right in the center of the city, Shumo felt the coldness gradually coming from his body, and his face became a little ugly. He still overestimated his mental strength. Such a huge amount of energy is no longer something he can completely control. Fortunately, with the assistance of the Dark God Book, he can roughly control the trend of energy. However, without any way to control it accurately, part of the energy had already escaped, and this escaped energy began to gradually erode his body. In fact, logically speaking, this situation is inevitable. Unless the mental power is strong to a certain extent, the original can be prevented from being affected by this situation as much as possible. Otherwise, almost all necromancers' bodies would not look like dry mummies. This is all due to erosion by undead energy. But there is no turning back when the bow is fired. Shumo could only grit his teeth and persevere. At this time, the bones piled up on the street seemed to have absorbed enough energy. Balls of soul fire ignited in their heads. Nearly half of these skeletons slowly got up from the ground. They held various weapons and began to walk towards the outskirts of the city. The remaining half of the skeletons were all disintegrated. Start to reorganize and synthesize various more powerful undead creatures. Countless bones gradually gathered in various areas. Undead Knight, Skeleton King, Bone Dragon. In fact, there are many types of undead creatures. Ghosts, corpse witches, undead. However, these undead creatures are transformed from souls. These zombies are obviously dead creatures without souls. This also leads to the transformation of some skeleton undead. But to deal with these zombies, these skeleton undead creatures with physical attacks are enough. Over time, the gray energy in the space has gradually become thinner, and most of it has been absorbed by the skeletons. Various undead creatures have also been transformed. At this time, the city was already crowded with various skeleton soldiers. Near the center, there are nearly 100,000 undead knights and hundreds of skeleton kings nearly 30 meters high. In the sky, dozens of bone dragons with a length of more than 100 meters were circling, waving their thin bone wings. Shumo's situation seemed a bit bad. At this time, his body was as dry as skin and bones. No more consciousness. It looked like a skeleton with a layer of skin and flesh, lifeless. Only the eyes revealed a hint of brilliance. But he knew that the spell was not over yet. The remaining energy in the entire magic array began to gather crazily towards the gray energy ball rolling in the sky. As more and more energy is gathered, the energy ball gradually splits apart. Finally, 10 spheres were formed that were almost the same size as the previous file. The moment the division is completed, the shape of the sphere began to change drastically. After a while, it turned into a humanoid creature. This creature does not appear to have a physical body, but is made of pure energy. At the position of the head, 2 scarlet eyes emitted a strange light. After these 10 figures were generated, they floated independently to Shumo in the air. Owner. Looking at the appearance of these figures, the name of an undead creature appeared in his mind. Lich. According to the records about Lich in the Dark God book, there are 2 types of Lichs. One is that the necromancer transforms himself into an undead creature in some way. The other kind is the one in front of you. A Lich that relies entirely on resentment. This kind of Lich has a higher affinity for undead magic than the Lich transformed by the necromancer. It can be said that he was born to become a necromancer. Can cast almost any necromancy magic. With these Lichs, they can continuously cast undead summons on zombie corpses to strengthen these undead armies. With the birth of 10 Lichs, the light of the magic circle that enveloped the entire city also gradually faded until it finally disappeared. Shumo's figure slowly fell from the sky. The moment his body touched the ground, the body turned directly into fly ash and dissipated between heaven and earth. After receiving his notice, Jin Taishi and the other 3 who returned here with the help of the space door changed their expressions when they saw this scene. Boss. 3 people stepped forward. As the body dissipated, Shumo's soul-emitting blue light also appeared in place. He didn't expect that using this magic would destroy the body. But fortunately, the magic was finally completed. 3 women and 10 Lichs can complete the rest. Moreover, if necessary, he can come to this world at any time. Although his counterpart in this parallel world is gone, in the future he can still use the power of the contract to enter the body of anyone using the 3 women as a medium. And thus came into this world. Of course, it is the kind of entry that takes over the other person's body. Although an incompatible body affects the performance of one's own strength, with these undead armies, there is no need to take action on one's own. He turned his head and explained to the 3 women, and then his figure gradually disappeared from the spot. In the Star Tower, Shumo's body was suspended and he slowly opened his eyes. Then landed on the ground. System, open the properties panel. During the process of casting magic, he had to concentrate on controlling the energy. In addition, he had turned off the beep for points acquisition, so he was still not sure whether the undead he transformed counted as points. His thoughts just stopped. A transparent properties panel appeared in front of him. Name, Shumo. Age, 20 years old. Power, 1495 tons. Speed, 1410 meters s. Psychokinesis, 1280 tons. Special ability, space freezing. Points, 11,538,200 points. Level, planet level 1. Looking at the large series of numbers in the points column, Shumo almost jumped up with excitement. More than 10 million points. The total of all the points obtained before does not exceed 200,000, not even a fraction of this. So many points gained at once now. He suddenly felt like he had become rich overnight. I couldn't wait to open the mall when I felt someone entering the room from outside the Star Tower. Shumo temporarily gave up his plan to exchange items and disappeared from the Star Tower in a flash. Suddenly appearing in the villa, he saw Annie sitting in the living room with a lonely look. Feel the movement behind you. Anne turned her head sharply. Seeing Shumo standing behind the sofa, she had a surprised smile on her face, jumped up from the sofa, ran 2 steps and threw herself into his arms. My dear, you are finally back. As she spoke, her voice became choked up. Shumo felt something was wrong with the other person's mood, so he stretched out his hand and caressed the other person's head. What's wrong? What happened? Anne shook her head. She broke away from his embrace and looked at his face seriously. The tears on his face turned into a smile. No, I just miss you a little. When Shumo heard this, he breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile on his face. Isn't it just a few days? Let's see how anxious I am to you. How many days? Anne murmured in confusion. Seeing the expression on the other person's face, Shumo had a bad feeling in his heart. He looked up at the clock on the living room wall. Look at the date recorded above. October 28, 2008. More than 2 months have passed. Shumo had a surprised look on his face. He remembered very clearly that Wanda's university started in August, and it was also August when he used the dream walking technique. All in all, I could only stay in another world for a week. How long have I been missing? Shumo asked Annie in his arms. 73 days. Annie replied without hesitation. If you put it this way, the time between the 2 worlds is about 10 to 1. Shumo thought to himself, and at the same time he was secretly glad that he didn't stay in that world too long. Otherwise, maybe by the time he comes back, several years have passed in this world. Honey, Annie woke up Shumo from thinking. I haven't seen you for more than 2 months. Is there nothing you want to do? When Shumo heard this, he saw the other party's eyes that were almost twitching, and put on a look of surprise on his face. Indeed, after such a long time, the flowers at home really need to be watered. Hearing Shumo's answer, Annie cast a beautiful glance. He put on a fierce expression on his face. It's not just the flowers at home that need watering. After saying that, he pushed him down on the sofa without any explanation. By the time Shumo returned to the Star Tower again, it was already the next morning. After all, your body is still good for you. A refreshed Shumo came outside the training room. The fighting power of my own body is not comparable to that of peers in other worlds. According to Captain America, he can go on spending time with the other party. Just as he was about to enter the training room, Xingji appeared at the side with a smile on her face. Master, wouldn't it be boring to be alone in the training room? Do you need some training? The kind where you can customize your clothes. As she spoke, she turned around a few times, her clothes constantly changing in the process. What about black stockings, lowly outfits, sailor uniforms, nurse outfits? Everything you need. A dark line appeared on Shumo's face. Don't read random stuff on the internet when you have nothing to do. After saying that, Shumo turned around and walked into the training room. Xingji looked at the closed door with a look of confusion on her face. No, I think people on the internet really like this tune, right? Shumo, who entered the training room, suppressed the restless emotions in his heart. Not all benefits come from being too strong. It's like he has completely lost the ability to enter the sage's time. After a while, Shumo calmed down and opened them all to search carefully. The first is items that enhance strength. Before becoming immortal, there is no need to spend time slowly accumulating energy. Each stage has corresponding treasures that enhance strength. And the number of treasures that can enhance planet-level strength is even greater. Shumo searched inside. In an instant, various treasures that can enhance planet-level strength appeared. Hidden dragon grass, red flame fruit, starleaf cold dew. Shumo was dazzled by these treasures. Finally, Shumo's eyes fell on an item called a planet-level nutrition cabin. Planet-level nutrition cabin. The cabin is equipped with special spiritual liquid, which can upgrade planet-level 1st level to planet-level 9th level, which takes a month. Points required for redemption, 500,000. It only takes a month to advance from planet level 1 to level 9. Among all the treasures Shumo saw, this was the shortest time consuming. After only a moment of hesitation, Shumo made up his mind. Purchase. With more than 10 million points, Shumo can be said to be wealthy. After redeeming the nutrition cabin, Shumo continued to browse the mall. The nutrition cabin improves the physical strength. And he still needs to upgrade his mental psychokinesis to planet level 9. In the end, Shumo chose a spiritual liquid called Bibo Marrow. Each drop of this spiritual liquid has 100,000 points. It takes 10 drops to advance from planet level 1 to level 9. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Bibo Essence 10, which consumes 1 million points. After exchanging the two items, Shumo was not in a hurry to use them. Instead, he continued browsing in the system mall. Improve combat effectiveness, including many aspects. In addition to its own strength, another aspect is weapons and equipment. Soon the system prompts sounded in his ears. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 3rd level Force Suit and the Feather God Armor, which cost 2.6 million points. The Feather God Armor is similar to the Black God Suit and can change its appearance according to your heart. It's not that he doesn't want to exchange for a higher level suit, but with a planet level force level, he can only use 3rd level suits and weapons at most. Suddenly, a white feather-like object over 50 centimeters long appeared in Shumo's hand. Squeeze a drop of blood from your finger and drop it on it. In a moment, the huge amounts of feathers turned into a viscous liquid, absorbent on Shumo's body. Then it spread along the surface of Shumo's body. After a while, under Shumo's control, it turned into a suit that completely wrapped his body. The suit changes shape according to his thoughts. Finally it turned into a suit and was put on him. This Feather God Armor, like the Black God Suit, can weaken the power by 90%. The only difference is that the Feather God Armor has a higher upper limit, and even the attacks of universe-level powerhouses can still be weakened by 90%. The defense limit of the Black God Suit is only a stellar attack. After getting familiar with the Feather God Armor, Shumo was no longer in a hurry to exchange items. Most psychokinesis weapons have requirements for mental strength amplitude, and he plans to calm down and practice for a while. After all the points in the apocalyptic world are received, you can then consider what treasures to redeem. Anyway, judging from the situation where the undead army is attacking more and more, it will take more than a month at most to clear out all the zombies in that world. Even if there is a 10-fold time gap between the two worlds, it is only about a year in this world. Pennsylvania State University, a certain teaching building. Wanda walked down the stairs with a few books in her arms. Wanda, wait a minute. Just as he was about to go downstairs, a man chased him downstairs. Hearing this voice, Wanda showed an ugly look on her face, and then she seemed to have not heard it, but speeded up her steps downstairs. Despite this, still, a figure soon caught up from behind and blocked her in front of her. The man is wearing a plaid shirt and jeans. After a pause, he took out 2 tickets from his shoulder bag. Classmate Wanda, I have 2 concert tickets here. Do you want to go and enjoy them together tonight? Looking at the man blocking the front, Wanda's eyes flashed with boredom. Student Scott, I have reiterated it many times, please call me by my last name. We are not familiar with each other to this extent. Here in the United States, when calling others, they always use their last name. Only people who are very familiar with each other will call each other's name. Also, I'm married. I love my husband very much. It's impossible and I have no interest in going to any concerts with you. Please don't harass me again in the future, otherwise I will choose to call the police. After saying that, Wanda ignored the other party's ugly look, directly picked up the classmate beside her, walked around the other party and walked downstairs. Scott looked at the other person's leaving figure, took a deep breath, and his expression returned to normal. And put on a smile again. Then he chased the opponent again. The first time he saw Wanda get off the red Ferrari, he had already made up his mind to catch her. After all, he believed that only in college would he have the opportunity to come into contact with such a beautiful and wealthy woman. As for the other party's so-called marriage remarks, he didn't believe it at all. He had already investigated clearly and found out that the Wanda in front of him was a freshman this year. How could a woman of this age and with such wealth enter the marriage hall at this age? All these are just excuses for the other party to reject him. He firmly believes that as long as he persists, he will be able to impress the other party sooner or later. As for the embarrassment at this moment, it didn't matter. If he really can't impress the other party by then, he can only take desperate measures. Downstairs. As soon as Wanda walked out, she noticed a familiar figure not far away. Seeing this, she showed a surprised smile on her face, ran 2 steps and jumped directly into the other person's arms. This person is naturally Shumo, who just came over. "Dear, why are you here?" Shumo handed the flower in his hand to the other party. No matter whether you are a woman of any age, your mood will change in several levels after receiving flowers. This is the experience he has gained over the years. Of course it's because I miss you. Shumo reached out and caressed the other person's head, and said with a smile. When Wanda heard this, she lightly pecked Shumo on the face. Then she seemed to have thought of something, and reached out to pull the girl beside her over. "Let me introduce to you, this is my good friend Sky." After speaking, she also introduced Shumo to the other party. At this time, Shumo turned to look at the girl beside him. The moment their eyes met, the expressions on their faces changed at the same time. Yes, Sky recognized at a glance that the person in front of him was the person who peeked at her bathing through a special door in her bathroom last time. "Yes, I am Wanda's husband." Seeing the other person's expression, Shumo quickly recalled it and quickly reached out to hold the other person's outstretched fingers. At this time, Sky also reacted. Although the other party took advantage of what happened last time, she could guess from the other party's expression that it was probably not intentional. After all, the two have never met. Besides, when someone peeps, they will open the peephole as big as one person. Wanda asked with a confused look on her face when she saw Sky's expression. "What, you two know each other?" Sky came back to his senses and quickly shook his head. "No, I just look familiar to your husband." Wanda smiled awkwardly when she heard this and glanced at Shumo. There was a hint of resentment in his tone. "Indeed, my husband used to be a frequent reader of Playboy magazine." Hearing Wanda's words, Shumo did not defend himself. Instead, he changed the topic directly. "Okay, don't talk about these unhappy things. It's getting late. Let's go get something to eat first." Wanda and the two nodded after hearing this. At this time, a figure chased up from behind. Scott, who came closer, looked at Shumo and Wanda holding flowers, and the look on his face changed. This is, when Wanda saw that the other party was still entangled, a trace of anger appeared on her face. "Who he is has anything to do with you. Do we know each other well?" After saying that, she hugged Shumo's arm and left together. Shumo looked at the man coldly. What just happened upstairs has been clearly reflected in his mind through psychokinesis. "I originally planned to come down and send someone to take care of him. But I didn't expect this person to be so thick-skinned." Thinking of this, he turned to Wanda and said, "Next time you have this kind of trouble, remember to tell me, or you can call Avril, she will help you solve these troubles." After Wanda heard it, she quickly explained, "I just don't think it's necessary to trouble you, and I thought that after rejecting the other party would give up." Shumo stretched out his hand to comfort the other party. Walked up to the man. When the man saw Shumo walking up, a look of panic flashed across his face. But the other party quickly calmed down. "Brother, fair play." Hearing this, Shumo was laughed out of anger. He would not let such an unstable factor stay by Wanda's side. "If you like competition so much, I'll give you a chance to compete in prison to pick up soap." After saying that, Shumo's eyes flashed with a strange purple color. Scott on the other side was stunned for a moment, then turned around and left with dull eyes. When Wanda saw each other, they turned and left. I was relieved in my heart. But she didn't expect Shumo to let him go so easily. After all, judging from previous contacts, he is not such an easy person to get along with. After saying goodbye to Sky, Wanda drove the Ferrari towards the outside. Until the car disappears from sight. "Have you and Sky known each other for a long time?" While driving the vehicle, Wanda asked. "No, of course I don't know him." Shumo denied it. He wasn't lying. After all, he really didn't know him. If he hadn't noticed the difference in the other person's expression, he really wouldn't have recognized the other person in his clothes. Wanda obviously didn't believe it. But she didn't ask any more questions. After dinner, In the room of the villa, Shumo took out a file-sized black glove and handed it to Wanda opposite. This is. Wanda took it with a puzzled look on her face and looked at Shumo doubtfully. Put a drop of blood on it. Hearing Shumo's words, Wanda's eyes lit up. The storage ring that required bleeding last time was still on her finger. Obviously, this is another similar treasure. Thinking of this, she took a dagger from the storage ring without any hesitation and lightly swiped it on her finger. She frowned slightly. A drop of blood dripped from the finger, fell on the black glove, and was absorbed into it. In a moment, the black gloves turned into liquid and flowed towards her body. After a while, a red windbreaker appeared on her body. Honey, this is amazing. After staying with Wanda for 2 days, Shumo left the entrance of the villa. Sonia looked at Shumo leaving, rubbed the dark circles under his eyes, and let out a sigh of relief on his face. After Wanda's strong persuasion, she finally stayed. Later she found out that Wanda and she were students at the same university. However, during the past 2 days, she had been suffering almost all the time at night. Every night she could not fall asleep listening to the sound from next door that lasted all night. In addition, the sheets need to be washed in the morning and classes need to be taken during the day. Fortunately, the other party only stayed for 2 days before leaving. Otherwise, she would probably collapse before long. Soon, Wanda came back from outside. The two returned to the living room. Seeing Sonia's dark circles, Wanda's face turned red and she spoke apologetically. I'm sorry, you haven't been able to rest well these past 2 days. Hearing this, Sonia waved her hands quickly. No, after all, this is your home. I am the only one who disturbed you. After saying that, Sonia looked at Wanda's rosy complexion in the past 2 days, and secretly sighed in her heart, is it really so magical? As a pure manual player, a trace of curiosity gradually arose in her heart. Do you want to read the other party's memory and see what's going on? Sonia has always been hiding a secret. She is actually a mutant. Ability is to read and modify other people's memories. She even imitated Magneto and Mystique and gave herself a name in private. Sweet dreamer. This thought just came to mind. She quickly dismissed it. No, Wanda is kind enough to take me in. How can I prying into each other's privacy at will? While she was thinking wildly, Wanda across from her held her cell phone and let out an exclamation. Before she could ask questions, Wanda held the phone in front of her. Look at this. Hearing this, Sonia looked at a news item on her phone. A freshman at State University named Scott was arrested for robbing a bank and is expected to face 25 years in prison. Is this the person who has been pestering you before? Sonia asked with a surprised look on her face. Wanda also mentioned this matter to her when chatting. Thanks to her amazing memory, she reacted immediately when she saw the other person's name. Wanda nodded. Island of the Dead. After Shumo returned to the beach villa, he directly entered the Star Tower. Returning to the training room, he accelerated time 10 times, and then took out the nutrition bin. The nutrition cabin is a silver-white cabin nearly 3 meters long. The appearance of the cabin is full of technology. After studying the instructions for a long time, Shumo finally understood how to use the nutrition cabin. Pressing a button on the side of the cabin, the door opened. The interior of the cabin is about 50 centimeters deep and filled with a light green liquid. These liquids are the key to allowing him to advance to the 9th level of planet level. Shumo took off his clothes and lay directly in. As the hatch closed, the liquid in a certain cabin seemed to be activated and poured into his body. Shumo closed his eyes. Start practicing the illustration of gods and demons. A year and a half flew by. At this time, earth-shaking changes have taken place on Death Island. In the very center of the island, a large number of buildings have appeared. However, the number of people on the island has been greatly reduced. As early as a year ago, the soldiers who had completed training, led by Sauron and others, went hunting in various locations around the world to help Shumo earn points. After more than a year of practice, Sauron and the other 9 have all been promoted to the warrior level. As for the soldiers under his command, the worst ones have reached the level of junior soldiers. After all, he continued to eat the meat of ferocious beasts every day. Even a teacup dog can now hit a tiger with a hammer. At this time, only the White Queen, a dozen mutants, and the researchers were left on the island. Sentry robots are responsible for all security duties. In the training room of Star Tower, Shumo slowly opened his eyes. Although only 1 year has passed in the outside world, due to the acceleration of time in the Star Tower, he has already experienced a full 15 or 16 years. It took 2 months for his mental and physical strength to reach the 9th level of planet level. But it took more than 10 years. The Thunder Sword has reached the 20th level, and the illustration of gods and demons has reached the 40th level. But he is still stuck at the planet level peak and has been unable to break through. Thinking about it, according to the devouring method, blindly relying on external forces to improve will lead to this situation. From the 9th level of each level to the next level, it will be very difficult to break through. Nowadays, it is normal to be trapped for decades. After reaching the stellar level, if there are no accidents, it may not be possible to break through to the cosmic level in a lifetime. The reason why City Lord Luo was able to quickly improve was through the nutrition cabin. Thanks to the existence of Golden Horn duplication. After having Golden Horn duplication, Golden Horn is the main body, and as long as Golden Horn's internal world grows, there will be no bottleneck in the growth of his human body. Shumo had long expected that this would happen. Of course, I have already thought about using the same response method. After more than a year, all the zombies in the other world have been cleared away. Think of this, Shu muttered silently. System, open the properties panel. The words just fell. The familiar attribute panel appeared in front of him. Name, Shumo. Age, 21 years old. Power, 300,000 tons. Speed, 100,000 meters s. Psychokinesis, 300,000 tons. Special ability, space freezing. Points, 6,003,538,200 points. Level, planet level 9. Look at the points column. Shumo had a shocked look on his face. 6 billion points. Much more than he imagined. According to the information obtained from that world, when the zombie virus broke out, the population of the entire world was only about 6.7 billion. In other words, after the virus broke out, 6 billion humans were infected by the virus and turned into zombies. I was originally worried that I wouldn't have enough points to redeem the ability I was already optimistic about. But now, there is no need to worry about this. Thinking of this, he opened them all. Find the ability that you have long been optimistic about. Talent ability duplication. Ignore any rules and breed 5 duplications. The level of the duplications born is the same as the original body. As long as one duplication survives, the other duplications can be quickly reshaped. Points required for redemption, 5 billion. This kind of talent ability requires 5 billion points. Almost all of these points can be exchanged for an ordinary treasure. But in Shumo's opinion, this kind of ability is much more powerful than those ordinary treasures. The most important thing is to ignore any rules. Whether it is flesh and blood, energy, or the incarnation of rules, this duplication can breed them all. Although the golden horned behemoth also possesses the talent of duplication, it is not on the same level as this one. Exchange. Shumo redeemed this ability without any hesitation. Congratulations to the host for getting the talent, duplication, which consumes 5 billion points. Moment. A strange wave appeared on Shumo. Almost in a moment, this fluctuation disappeared. However, Shumo secretly felt that he had obtained the ability to give birth to duplication. After redeeming this, Shumo did not stop, but searched for a genetic sample in the mall. Gene sample of the space-time beast god. The space-time beast god, one of the natural beast gods, integrates the laws of time and space. Points required for redemption, 1 billion. This is the combination he had thought of for a long time. Using this duplication ability, the space-time beast god, one of the natural beast gods, was born. After reaching the star level, you can initially understand the rules. Coupled with the time and space gems in this world, Shumo chose the path of integrating the 2 laws of time and space without any hesitation. Although this is relatively the most difficult path, it is also the most powerful path. If you can't reach your strongest level by cheating, then what's the point of cheating? You must know that the time and space beast god is the incarnation of the natural integration of the 2 laws of time and space. In the original universe, one is born to be the master of the universe. Although after being conceived by the talent ability, he will be the same as himself, but at the planet level. But I think the other party's affinity for the two laws of time and space will definitely not change. Coupled with this kind of unique and special life in the universe, the perfect 10,081 times genetic level, even the planet level, the divine body alone may be able to compete with the universe level. And the reason for redeeming duplication ability first. It is also to be able to practice the treasure book, 9 Tribulations secret book that can improve the genetic level. You must know that the 9 Tribulations secret code is a secret method that can break the genetic level below the World Lord level no more than 100 times. It can be imagined that it is difficult to practice. And every time the cultivation fails, the body's genes will directly collapse. Without the secret method of duplication, even if you have hundreds of lives, it will not be enough. After consuming 1 billion points again, Shumo looked at only 3 million points left. He shook his head helplessly. 6 billion points were almost consumed in an instant. But it's all worth it. He looked at a test tube containing a strange liquid that appeared in his hand. Is this a genetic sample of the beast god? Without any hesitation, Shumo directly took out the sample inside, and then activated his talent ability. Moment. Countless streams of light began to gather rapidly around the liquid. In almost less than 5 minutes, a huge streamer cocoon with a diameter of 2 meters appeared in front of him. Seeing that this cocoon is still growing, Shumo quickly planned to call Xingji. But as soon as he had this idea, Xingji already appeared beside him. As the Star Tower artifact spirit, naturally any movement could not be hidden from her. The moment Shumo gave birth to duplication, she noticed the movement here. Xingji looked at the big cocoon in front of her with a strange expression. In an instant she saw clearly the essence inside. Read duplication, a natural beast god. Even though she didn't know what level of strength she had reached, she felt a little surprised. She has seen the beast god who was born to seize his body. It was the first time she had seen it conceived through the secret technique of duplication. But now is not the time to think about this. This giant cocoon has expanded to the size of a house file. If you hesitate any longer, it will touch the wall of the training room. She waved her hand. The surrounding scene changes instantly. The two of them, together with the giant cocoon, had arrived in a vast starry sky. There's plenty of room for it to grow. A few hours later, the cocoon expanded to a file size of more than 30 kilometers in diameter. It was only then that it gradually stopped expanding. The expansion was completed and the giant cocoon became stable. It's just that there is constant light flowing into it. After waiting for half an hour, the giant cocoon did not change again. Judging from the situation, it seems that this pregnancy process cannot be completed in a short time. At this moment, Shumo planned to return to the practice room. But he was grabbed by Xingji on the side. How did you do that? She looked at Shumo in surprise. Keep it secret. It was rare to make the other party feel embarrassed, so Shumo naturally couldn't tell the other party. Return to the training room. Shumo looked at the remaining 3 million points. He simply spent another 3 million points to exchange for a third-level high-grade spiritual psychokinesis weapon, 1000 machine disc. The Qionji disc is a metal disc with a diameter of nearly 1 meter. The whole body is assembled from 10,081 pocket swords. There are 3 levels of form. The first level is the sky-splitting sword. It requires the psychokinesis amplitude to reach above 20 before it can be used. It can increase the amplitude of psychokinesis by 5 times. Just like his current psychokinesis is 300,000 tons. When the amplitude is 40, the total impact force can reach 12 million tons. After the amplitude of the sky-splitting sword, it can reach 60 million tons. The second level, Star Shield. It requires a psychokinesis amplitude of 35 or above to practice. The last level, 1000 machines, requires an amplitude of 80. While Shumo was studying the 1000 machine disc in a training hall in the center of Death Island, Raven was looking at Magneto with an unkind expression. At this time, Magneto Eric was lying on the ground with a bruised nose and a swollen face. As a condition of joining, Raven would beat up Magneto once a month. Without being able to use his ability, Magneto's fighting ability is far inferior to Raven's. This time, Eric, who was panting on the ground, saw a space door slowly opening not far from the two of them. A man with purple skin walked out. Behind him followed a woman. The woman wears a purple tights and a red belt, with her long black hair tied behind her head. See this. Raven stopped kicking his right foot out and looked at the two of them defensively. Who are you? After the man heard this, a smile appeared on his face. Of course I'm here to save you. Eric also stood up from the ground when he saw this. Unlike Raven and White Queen, mutants with mutated bodies can slow down the rate of aging. Even now, he still looks like he is in his 20s or 30s. He and Professor X were already aging like ordinary people. If Raven hadn't stopped just now, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to stand up now. Despite this, just the action of standing up took him more than 10 seconds. Looking at Magneto's appearance, the man stepped forward. It seems that we will be disappointed this time. This time, Emma's figure walked in from outside. With her current psychic ability, she sensed the two of them the moment they appeared on the island. Who are you and what are you doing here? Emma felt the powerful energy in the other person's body and asked cautiously. I searched in my mind for a long time. There is no information about this man. And she was no stranger to the spiritual butterfly behind the man. He is also a mutant with psychic abilities. It's just that the opponent's ability and his own focus on different directions. Psylocke's psychic ability focuses more on the materialization of mental power, and can turn mental power into weapons. Saw Emma walking in. The man's eyes lit up. I can feel your power, it's so powerful. Pretend to be a ghost. Hearing the other party's inexplicable words, Emma showed an impatient look on her face. In her opinion, the man in front of her looked like a psychopath, talking to himself and answering questions incorrectly. A silver light flashed in his eyes. Psychic ability activates instantly. Psylocke, who was standing behind Apocalypse, saw this and activated his psychic ability at the same time. Although the focus is different, with her ability, she can still resist the control of the White Queen on the opposite side. Of course, this was before the White Queen practiced the secret technique given by Shu Mo. As soon as they made contact, Lingdi's expression changed. The spiritual ability strengthened by Apocalypse was unable to resist the invasion of the other party's spiritual ability. It almost lasted less than half a minute. Lingdi's face became dull. And Apocalypse, standing in front of her, as the oldest mutant, also froze in place for the first time. In the spiritual world, he looked at the White Queen who appeared here and felt the tremendous pressure on her. He opened his mouth to explain. We are not enemies, I am here to lead you to retake the world that was taken away by those inferior humans. Listening to the other party's inexplicable words, the White Queen looked at him like an idiot. You'd better explain these words to my boss. After saying that, silver threads wrapped around each other's Apocalypse. Seeing the other party's eyes, Tianchi felt that His Majesty was being despised. He shouted angrily at the moment. You stupid mutant, it seems that my Majesty has been forgotten by people over the years. The words are not finished yet. His body was tied up by those silver silk threads. Apocalypse was not flustered. You know nothing about my power. After saying that, his body expanded rapidly, trying to break free from the shackles of these threads. The White Queen heard these familiar words. The last one said this, if it weren't for keeping it useful, the ashes would have been scattered. However, Tianchi, who has lived for thousands of years, is obviously not just relying on bragging. As his body grew stronger, the silk threads wrapped around his body gradually fell apart. When Emma saw this scene, she also showed a slightly surprised expression on her face. After practicing the magic secrets taught to her silently for more than a year, she can be regarded as the well-deserved #1 in spiritual ability. Even Professor X, she was confident that she could control him within 3 minutes. But the mutant in front of him was able to break free from his control. However, judging from the opponent's way of breaking free, his skills are far behind his own, and he just relies on his strong mental power. Seeing this, Emma also showed a serious look on her face. However, compared to her, Apocalypse on the opposite side was even more shocked. You know, as the first mutant, he has seen countless mutants with psychic abilities over the years. He also has the ability to do this. However, his ability focuses on mind reading and consciousness transfer. Despite this, he is no less capable of manipulating other people's consciousness than any mutant who specializes in this aspect. But this was the first time he felt threatened by a mutant with psychic abilities. Looking at the overwhelming number of threads heading towards him again, he also had the intention of retreating. You know, his consciousness is trapped here, but his body is still outside. There are people from the other side all around outside. But the other party has trapped himself in the consciousness space. If he does not expel the other party, he will have no way to regain control of his body. Thinking of this, his eyes moved. He directly detonated part of his mental power and expelled the White Queen from the sea of consciousness at the cost of mental damage. After Tianqi came back to his senses, he activated the teleportation ability without any hesitation. A portal opened and he jumped in. White Queen's expression changed. She looked at where the other party disappeared and sighed. The training time is still too short. Facing the opponent's mental power several times her own, she still couldn't completely suppress it. Looking at Lingdi, who was still stunned in place, Emma gave instructions to the two staff members behind her. Put an ability suppression collar on her and wait until the boss comes back to make plans. The two people behind him heard the words, nodded quickly and stepped forward to put a black collar on her. By the way, put it on her hands and feet. This person's abilities are a bit unusual. The White Queen, who was just about to walk out of the door, gave her instructions again before turning and leaving. The White Queen didn't know that Apocalypse had the ability to strengthen other mutants, but from the recent contact, she noticed this. Not a while, the two men, who were covered in mutant restraint collars, were thrown into a nearby room and locked up. Raven and Eric were the only two people left in the hall again. Raven looked at the gray-haired Eric and had no intention of taking action anymore. He turned around and walked outside. One day later, Shumo retreated from the Star Tower. After more than 10 days of practice, he has been able to master the first level of the 1000 machine disc skillfully. The second level can also be displayed. In a flash, his figure had appeared over the sea a few kilometers away from the island. Looking at a file-sized island of about 1 square kilometer not far away, the 1000 machine disc appeared next to him. With him, psychokinesis rushed inside. The Qianji Pan was quickly divided into 10,081 small swords, and then these small swords were reassembled. Finally, it turned into a giant sword more than 3 meters long. Under the full force of psychokinesis, the patterns on the surface of the giant sword were instantly activated and disappeared in a flash. 2 seconds passed. There was a violent roar from the island in the distance. Under Shumo's gaze, the island was completely blown to pieces. Then it fell within a radius of 5 kilometers and slowly sank. This movement instantly alarmed the people on Death Island. However, with the comfort of the White Queen, the people on the island gradually calmed down. To be able to exert such great power without being noticed by herself, the White Queen is almost certain that this movement was caused by Shumo. Shumo didn't expect it to be so powerful. There are 2 ways to attack the first layer of sky-splitting sword: impact and penetration. The 2 methods each focus on different aspects. The impact was just the way he was. The moment the giant sword comes into contact with an object, the small swords combined on it will stand up like fish scales toward the front. Increase the resistance on the giant sword and the island. And dissipate the spiritual energy on it towards the surroundings. Causes huge amounts of impact. Basically, this case focuses more on group destruction ability. The other type is penetration. The entire sword body remains streamlined and the power is concentrated on a point at the tip of the sword. Single target attack power reaches maximum. However, when encountering a larger target, it will cause penetrating damage. He nodded with satisfaction. A moment later, Shumo appeared in the White Queen's room on the island. You made such a big noise as soon as you came back. Emma held the wine glass, looked at Shumo across from him, and made a lazy sound in her mouth. By the way, a man and a woman broke into the island yesterday. With that said, White Queen handed a piece of information to Shumo. The woman is a mutant Psylocke who lived at the same time as us. She was previously working for Caliban, a mutant intelligence dealer. I don't know why she ended up here with someone else. The other one is also a mutant, but I can't find any information about him. And the opponent's power is so powerful that even I can't keep him. Hearing this, Shumo opened the document in his hand and looked inside. Look at the blue face in the photo above. Apocalypse. Egypt. In one of the pyramid's ruins. Tianqi looked suspicious of life. At this time, there was still a feeling of weakness in his sea of consciousness from time to time. Being trapped beneath the pyramids for thousands of years. Because of the entry of several archaeologists, he was able to see the light of day again. I originally thought that I would reorganize the 4 knights and stage the scene of the return of the king, but I didn't expect that before the 4 knights were gathered, they fell directly here and became a prisoner. The dignified ancestor of mutants. Almost invincible among mutants. Among the mutants existing in this world now, the only one who can reliably suppress him seems to be the White Queen, who has practiced the secret magic of magic. Unfortunately, after he came out, he found the White Queen first. You can't blame him for his bad luck, you can only blame him for his bad luck. However, he was not discouraged. Since he knew that the opponent's psychic ability was strong, he could naturally respond to this aspect. In the laboratory on Death Island, Shumo looked at Psylocke, who was being controlled by several callers. Wearing purple clothes similar to ninja uniforms really makes men unable to help but take a second look at the first sight. Shumo didn't have anything to ask about her. Originally, according to the development of the story in X-Men, Apocalypse should have been excavated by a group of archaeological teams after the timeline was restarted. After that, they found Storm, Psylocke, Angel and Lao Wan, and reorganized the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse, intent on regaining control of the world. But now it seems that the other party ran out for some reason at this time. And after absorbing Psylocke, he came to look for Magneto. It's a pity that I was scared away by White Queen. He directly took out a slave chip, took a drop of Psylocke's blood, and poured it on it. After the chip absorbed the blood, it turned into a stream of light and sank into Spirit Butterfly's eyebrow body. Slave chip, machinery technology. After integration, it will be completely controlled, retain all original memories, and be completely loyal to the master from the heart. The points required for redemption, 1000 points. Watching the slave chip integrate into her body, Shumo waved his hand behind him. 2 laboratory staff came forward and took off the ability suppression collar from her body. Lingdi stood up, moved his hands and feet, and bowed to Shumo respectfully. Owner. Seeing this scene, White Queen Emma, who was following Shumo, had a look of shock on her face. She could feel from the other party's eyes that Lingdi truly surrendered to Shumo. This is obviously the effect of the chip just now. Shumo asked the other party. Sure enough, it was no different from what I guessed. After waving to his men to take away Psylocke and make arrangements, Shumo and the White Queen returned to the room. As soon as he walked in, the White Queen sat directly on his lap and asked impatiently. What did you integrate for her just now? Shumo felt the softness on his legs and said casually. Slave chip. Emma nodded. She can understand what it is just by hearing the name. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. There were so many strange things on Shumo's body. After hesitating for a moment, she asked softly. Then why don't you install something like that on me? You know, the entire power is under my control now. Do you just believe in me? Shumo chuckled lightly when he saw the other party's serious expression. Because I have opened the channels to your heart, of course I will believe you. Of course, the main reason is that compared to Shumo, they are too weak. Coupled with his own restraint on spiritual ability, the other party poses no threat to him at all. After hearing this, White Queen's face flashed with emotion. In this case, boss, do you want to explore people's hearts again? 2 hours later, Shumo walked out of the room and saw Annie standing not far away with a somewhat unhappy face. I knew it wasn't that simple between you two, Anne muttered. But she didn't say much. Having been Shumo's girlfriend for several years, this is not the first time this has happened. Besides, these were all explained clearly in advance when the two became boyfriend and girlfriend, and she has long been used to it. Shumo didn't explain, but asked, when did you come back? It's not appropriate to say anything now, so the best way is to change the topic. The day before yesterday, I just heard they said you were coming back, so I came here specifically to find you. Annie replied with a smile. Although he was in seclusion, Shumo would come out every month or so. After all, under 20-fold acceleration, almost a year has passed in 1 month outside, and he always has to come out to communicate with others. After Annie figured out his pattern. During this period, I often went to see Wanda and stayed for nearly a month each time. The relationship between the two is also improving day by day. Back in the villa, Shumo helped the other party identify the owner of a black god suit. Anne excitedly kept changing the style of her coat in the room. After a moment, the familiar Catwoman tight leather outfit appeared on her body, and 2 more cat ear headdresses appeared on her head. He bent over and leaned on the sofa, his waist bent into an astonishing arc. Then he took off the cat-eared blindfold on his head and looked at Shumo beside him. "My dear, do you want to experience the joy of Batman again?" Xavier Academy for Young Talents. Located on a private estate on Staten Island, New York. The estate covers more than 300 acres. Except for the main building complex in the center, the surrounding area is like a garden with green grass and greenery. At the easternmost location, there is an artificial lake with an area of tens of thousands square meters. As the bell rang, boys and girls of different ages walked out of the classroom building holding books and walked towards the shade of the lake. At this time, a space door appeared in the open space in front of the building. Then a man wearing a helmet and dark purple skin walked out. It was Apocalypse, who left the island of the dead. In order to prevent the influence of the White Queen's psychic ability, he specially created a helmet that can isolate the psychic ability. But he was still a little worried. Decided to find some more subordinates as helpers. The X-Men and Xavier Academy for Geniuses are not big secrets in the world. Naturally, he found this place. The students looked at the sudden appearance of Apocalypse, and there was not much surprise on their faces. After all, most of the students in this academy are mutants. There are not a few mutants with strange appearances. At this time, a male teacher noticed what was going on here and walked up. "Hello, who are you looking for?" Hearing this, Tianchi glanced at the other party. Ordinary people. Although the students at Xavier Academy for Young Geniuses are all mutants, apart from the teachers who teach them to control their own abilities, most of the remaining teachers are ordinary people hired by Professor X. After realizing that the other party was an ordinary person, Tianchi showed a look of contempt on his face. Then his eyes moved. The man in his 30s standing in front of him sank and fell into the soil beneath him. Only one arm is left outside. And after struggling for a moment, his arm simply lost power and fell down. When the surrounding students saw this scene, they all screamed in surprise. Then he fled in all directions. Principal's office. Located on the top floor of the manor house. Professor X is sitting in a wheelchair behind his desk. He was saying something to Aurora in front of him. At this moment, the look on his face changed. As one of the most powerful mutants, he can naturally feel the emotions of these students in the academy. He steered the wheelchair to the window and looked down. Just in time to face Tianchi, who was looking over. Tianchi looked excited when he saw Professor X. He could feel that the other person's ability was somewhat similar to the ability of the woman he met before. As long as he seizes the body of this mutant and relies on his huge mental power, it is not difficult to defeat the woman. Although he wears this helmet, it can prevent the opponent's ability from intruding. But in the eyes of the self-proclaimed god, relying on a helmet to defeat the woman was a humiliation for him. In the office, Aurora looked at Professor. What happened? With that said, he walked towards the window. But not before she could take a few steps. A space door appeared aside, and Tianchi's figure walked out of it. Aurora was shocked when he saw this. He turned around and came to Professor X, looking at him warily. "Who are you?" Tianchi turned to look at her. "Someone who can let you completely release yourself." As he spoke, his eyeballs turned white, which was a sign of his ability. Aurora's expression changed as she stood in front of him. She felt that the energy in her body was growing rapidly. Under the riot of power, her body floated uncontrollably. Professor X's expression changed drastically when he saw this scene. Apocalypse's helmet made it impossible for him to affect the other party. Seeing that the movement around Aurora's body was getting louder and louder, he wanted to control the wheelchair to stop the opponent, but under the energy of the storm around Aurora, there was no way to get close. It wasn't until a minute later that Aurora's body fell back to the ground. Aurora came back to his senses with a look of shock on his face. In just over a minute, she felt that her ability was at least twice as strong as before. He looked at the other person with horrified eyes. "Who are you anyway? This world originally belonged to us mutants. It was those humans who took it away. I will lead you to take it back." Hear this. Professor X on the side controlled the wheelchair and stepped forward. No, this world belongs to all humans. Tianqi ignored him, but his eyes moved. Professor X's wheelchair flew directly under his control. Then a space door opened from behind Tianqi. Follow me. After saying something to Aurora, he controlled Professor X's wheelchair and walked towards the space door with him. However, Tianqi obviously overestimated his own appeal. A bolt of lightning struck in front of him, stopping him. Tianqi was stunned and turned to look at Aurora behind him. The current Aurora is obviously not the young girl who was strengthened by him and let him do his bidding after days of future past. Put the professor down. Aurora's body floated again, and lightning flashed around him. A lightning barrier was also placed between Apocalypse and the portal. When Tianqi saw this, his face showed a look of embarrassment and anger. Well, it seems that after many years, you mutants have become humans' lackeys. It's time for you to wake up. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire wall of the room turned into pieces and flew towards Aurora, knocking her out. This time, Wolverine, Colossus and Iceman also got the news and came to the room. Seeing Tianqi, the only person they didn't recognize, and the professor held hostage by him, they understood the situation in front of them in a few moments. Wolverine Logan clenched his hands into fists, adamantium's claw blade stretched out from between his fingers, and rushed forward with Colossus without any hesitation. But before they could get close, they were hit by a pile of gravel and flew out. The ice released by Iceman was also blocked by the protective shield around Apocalypse. Being provoked one after another, Tianqi also became angry. The humiliation of the defeat at White Queen came over him instantly. Welcome, the wrath of God. He waved his hands. The entire building began to gradually become deserted. Sha Shuo then transformed into flying towards the surroundings. Sha Shuo seemed to turn into a sharp blade, slicing across the neck of Wolverine, who jumped up again. Wolverine's jumping body fell back to the ground. After letting out a ho-ho sound in his mouth because his trachea was cut, the wound on his neck healed quickly. Fortunately, after the scene just now, all the students in the college had escaped. After a while, the entire building turned into flying sand under Apocalypse's ability. Storm, Colossus and Wolverine stood on the periphery, with no way to get close to the center. But the flying sand quickly flew towards them. After several dodges, all of them were wrapped in flying sand, leaving only one head exposed. After that, the figures of several people flew towards the center. The yellow sand in the sky gradually calmed down. Put us down quickly, Wolverine Logan yelled at Apocalypse. Don't worry, you will, but only after you become my loyal slave. His plan is very simple. After seizing Professor X's ability, he will rely on his psychic ability to control them. After saying that, he and a few people were about to enter the portal. At this time, a purple spark flashed next to him, and another portal opened next to him. It looks a bit lively. Shumo stepped out of the portal. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.